Eli5 How does so much plastic end up in the ocean? People in poor countries do not have the infrastructure to deal with waste as efficiently as wealthy ones. So, they throw their waste on the ground, or take it to places where it is piled up. After that, nature takes over and loose material is blown away until it lands in rivers and streams which, eventually, end up in lakes and oceans. People like to point out that the most polluted areas of our oceans are directly related to rivers in Asia and Africa. But that is simply because Europeans and North Americans have developed better ways of hiding our trash. The Americans buy a lot of plastic. The Americans have a lot of plastic waste. The Americans are not able to recycle their plastic waste. The Chinese tell the Americans that they are able to recycle plastic. The Americans sell their plastic to the Chinese. The Chinese take the plastic into international waters and dump it. The Americans see that there is a growing pile of plastic waste in the ocean, and tell everyone to recycle their plastic. The Chinese buy and dump more plastic, and the plastic island grows. You should know that reports about the amount of plastic in our oceans are highly exaggerated. A study came out just in the last couple of weeks that the number is a fraction of what we initially thought. Having said that, any amount of plastic in the ocean is bad and we should do our best not to let it happen, but then we have China and India with almost non-existent environmental regulations and massive coastlines. Hardly any regulations or poor infrastructure to deal with trash in majority of countries, especially Southeast Asia. Trash isn't secured and gets taken out to the ocean via floods, tides, natural disasters, etc. Also happens a lot in some South America countries as well. People like to think just North America and Europe can fix the issue by themselves, but don't realize it's just a small fraction of global population. We put it in our recycling. We don't recycle it. We put it on ships to send to poor counties. They don't recycle it. It ends up in rivers, or in the ocean during transport. Also, as a matter of mass, a huge amount of ocean plastic is made up of fishing nets. As much as 46. Text fishing 20 gear 20 accounts 20 for 20 roughly, a 20 name 3820 goes 20 fishing 20 gear. Chinese fishing nets, look it up, the majority of plastic in the Pacific is from discarded or ripped Chinese fishing nets that are made using very cheap plastics and harmful chemicals. It isn't the straws and Coke holder plastic that you see on the news, those are just the things they use to make you feel bad. The real issue is China, and it will continue to be China for the foreseeable future. A Canadian went to a resort in Mexico, about an hour south of Cancun for the first time this year. When we drove down, I was appalled by the amount of plastic bottles laying beside the roads. I walked around the gated community and saw too much garbage in the streams and wild areas. I really don't know what to say. It's horrific compared to what my home community is like. Rich countries ship their plastic garbage to lesser developed countries and they dump a lot of it in rivers or landfills, from where it eventually also ends up in rivers, which end up in oceans. Plus, developing countries nowadays produce a lot of plastic garbage by themselves, too. China has already reached levels of developed countries like Germany. Per capita, the simplest way to put it, water is sticky due to hydrogen bonds. When plastic hits it, it doesn't leave unless it's deliberately removed. There's a lot more to it obviously, but I think a you could quickly see how a plastic shopping bag can blow all over the place on land in the wind. Once it hits a body of water, it's instantly stuck in place. Plastic recycling is a lie. For decades every piece of plastic we thought we were recycling, was actually being shipped to third world countries and thrown in the ocean. In light of this discovery, it came out that plastic recycling isn't entirely feasible and the majority of plastic products aren't eligible for it. I don't think anyone's mentioned one of the main and most toxic types of plastic in the ocean: cigarette butts, odd as it seems. No prizes for guessing which countries are the most cigarette intensive. A lot of fishing equipment is made of plastic and is lost at sea due to storms and waves. That's 2030. Also, several countries, especially in Southeast Asia, pretty much just send garbage into the ocean via their rivers. China, India, Brazil, are big contributors. That's 70. Your soda straw isn't the problem. Plastic gets on the ground. Water washes plastic into drains. Drains eventually get to rivers. Rivers get to oceans. Oceans don't drain anywhere. Also, some plastic directly goes from humans to oceans. Fishing equipment has plastic. All the plastic a boat has when it goes out isn't there when it comes back. A lesser reason for it is because plastic is so light. Even if it's disposed of properly, some of it will blow out of landfills and other disposal areas. In general, The lighter plastic objects are harder to deal with. For example, bottles are pretty easy to process, but straws are virtually impossible because companies using plastic won't stop making it, and it makes its way out of the garbage can one way or another and into a creek that reaches a river that hits the ocean. Or some trash company dump right into the ocean or river. And littering. A lot of people just don't give fuck. Laundry. The sewage from developed countries is full of microplastics that passes through conventional 3-stage sewage treatment and is really only filtered out in 4-stage treatment. Think how you have to clean the dryer filter and the volume, and this is after the washer does its thing. The number I've found from my own guess is that around 14 million tons of plastic ends up in our oceans. UNESCO says 8-10 million tons of plastic per year. If I could choose between eliminating 70 or 2 by where I focused my efforts, I would choose 70. Additionally, most single-use plastics from the US don't reach the ocean due to good landfill management. So, the fact that we emphasize this out of all things is incredibly misplaced. I'm surprised I haven't seen anyone say this. Whenever you drop something on the ground that doesn't degrade in nature, it will end up in the ocean at some point. Wind and rain carries it until it ends up in a river somewhere, and rivers usually at some point end in the ocean. A lot of third world countries, especially in Southeast Asia, took a lot of plastic trash for recycling from Western countries and got paid for it. But instead of recycling it, corrupt governments and people threw it into rivers and oceans to make a maximum amount of profit. Most comments talk about big pieces of plastic, but microplastic are also an issue. Maybe even a bigger one. It's coming from everywhere. For example, car tires are a huge source of microplastics. Those tiny flakes get washed away with the rain, into the ground and oceans. There is a huge amount of third world countries that pretty much just have streams of trash constantly flowing into the ocean. For example, Dominican Republic is all pretty resorts on one side of the island and Trashville on the other side. By far, the worst is microplastics from car tires. Cars drive down roads and slowly wear microscopic bits of tire away. Then it rains and all those bits flow down a storm drain, to a river, and eventually, out to sea. Good luck, Earth! For a lot of less developed countries and regions, the only way they've ever gotten rid of their trash was by dumping it in the nearby river. Plastics just last way longer than anything else we have produced as a species up till now. 5 Asian countries dumped more plastic into oceans than anyone else combined. Aside from plastic straight up being dumped into it, plastic gets thrown on ground. One moves plastic from place to place. Plastic happens to land in water. Wind does not take plastic out of water back on land. Clothing is made from plastic, and every time you wash it, it sheds microplastics into the wastewater. This eventually flows to the oceans. Same with microplastic beads and beauty grooming products. I remember seeing somewhere that the vast majority of microplastics in the ocean come from degrading fishing nets. The fishing industry is pretty bad for the ocean in a lot of ways, making a lot of plastic and then just dumping it. It really is as simple that petroleum plastic is not naturally occurring, we just make it and throw it into the environment. This ocean cleanup Mark Ruber video explains it pretty well. It also shows where most of the plastic waste that goes into the ocean comes from. Rivers go to ocean. Every time a piece of trash is placed in a river or a lake, or blown off the land and into a stream, it will find its way to the ocean. People litter a lot. This is especially true in countries that do not have advanced trash collection systems like the Philippines and Indonesia. Most answers are for big plastics. For microplastics, washing machines and average wear of plastic-made products, like shoes on concrete. Third world nations dump it, and they will also dump plastic that is shipped in from counties where it's illegal to dump, like the USA. From what I understand, 80% of all trash litter that ends up in the ocean is from commercial fishing.